I think I really like what you're wearing anyway. It's just all sort of that authenticity. It just comes through with the tattoos. I love it. Yeah, but
Thanks, man. My
yeah.
wife hates my tattoos.
Oh, really? Did you have them
Yeah,
before you? Did you get them before you met? No.
I've had all of them since I met her. This is
Oh no.
this is the one she designed herself. It was meant to
Oh
be a matching
wow.
tattoo,
Uh
and
huh.
then after I got it, she was like, "This looks ugly," so she didn't get it.
That's horrible.
I'm
Oh,
stuck with it, and she got away with it.
and you're stuck with it. But what
I
about
like
the
it.
ones a bit lower? Like I think some I do see some. Yeah, yeah. What's the
You got
story
Mega
behind that?
Man, and then you
Mega
got
Man.
random cloud stuff. So
Oh, I love it.
I'm just waiting for the tattoo parlors to open up and go get more, man.
Yeah, and I love how you got a matching hat as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is awesome.
Had to keep that going.
Yeah, well, it's the same reason why I got this background. This is a bit of this is my little drone from the Chatswood office, flying towards Chatswood. This is
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I take my virtual walks now in the COVID world.
yeah.
Um, yeah, no,
No, it does look nice.
it does
Nice,
remind you that
sunny day.
it's a nice sunny day out there. But
Love a day
unfortunately,
off.
in this mess, how are you finding sort of the life through the new COVID realities?
Yeah, no, it's been pretty tough to be honest. I guess like all of us, we're trying to adjust and transition to the I guess this new sort of way of living. But yeah, I guess, especially within I guess the recruitment industry, it's pretty tough. In these times like this, the recruitment roles are borderline redundant. And
Mm.
there's a lot of people I've spoken to where they've a lot of recruiters have been let go. If not, there's pay cuts, there's, working, taking days off, and, I guess even, sort of commissions and stuff being put on hold. So it's pretty tough from that perspective when we all got, our sort of financial commitments. And then me personally, I guess in the last 3 months, a lot has changed because I've had my first kid, so 3 months
Oh,
newborn. So, loving the sleep deprivation that goes
yes.
along with that. But no, he's good. And then I also started up my own company, which at the time I thought was a good idea. But then obviously, like everyone, the virus hit, so that's
Oh,
impacted.
nobody could predict the pandemic.
No,
That's
exactly. So
yeah.
that's obviously impacted a lot. But I guess the silver lining, I guess in a sense, I've had extended paternity leave, so a lot of time spent with the little one and my wife. So that's been a good thing, and something to give me a bit more perspective, I guess, in this times.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, no, definitely. I think I remember when I was just a young dad, that's probably one of the things I regret, not having taken a bit more time to spend with the little one.
Mm.
And the truth is, they grow up so quickly. They grow up so quickly, and you blink and you almost miss it. So, I'm happy for you, mate, because I think I did hear a good friend of mine said, look, if you're not secretly enjoying this time, you haven't built a family. So I think
Yeah.
in some respect, you should be really thankful that there's this opportunity to remind us of the things which are more important. But I understand absolutely that it must be so stressful and tough for you that you've just started a company, and straight through this sort of uncharted territory.
Mm.
But I guess in some respects, I'd like to think that this is a bit of a test. Whatever emerges out the other side could be much better.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that all these people getting all these recruiters being made redundant, right? So this must be part of the 750,000 people I hear about that's out of work right now. There's these massive queues across Centrelink.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so what is going on in that world? You're very familiar with it, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
What are they? How are they coping?
Yeah, so you've got a mixture. So if you're talking about your big sort of top four or the sort of large companies, if they've got 50 to 100 people and there's only 10 jobs, then obviously they've got to cut costs. So that they've had to shed a lot of people. So some of the smaller ones might do okay because they got less overheads. But
Hmm.
ultimately, like recruitment and sales, it's a money business. So if you're not generating revenue and, you've got to keep, certain people happy or
But
things like that,
how do
then
you expect them to be generating business right now? I mean, look, let's face it, nobody's hiring. Look, I'll,
mm,
I'll take that back. Other than the obvious ones I heard the other day, Tulsa's
yeah,
hiring amongst others. Um, there's 750,000 people out of work, and a
mm,
lot of them are actually recruiters themselves. right? So surely you can't expect them to be delivering any results. You know, what are they, how are they actually going to do anything at this point?
Yeah, and that's a
The
really
last
good
thing
question.
the last thing you want to be talking to right now, like if I was a manager, it would be a recruiter, right? So
You are correct there, and that's the thing, right? I guess, and the reason why I guess it's tough because is like they're from their perspective, they've still got to do like everyone, right? They still got to do their jobs, and I guess in recruitment, part of that is unfortunately a lot of it's KPI driven. So they've been told to go get business, and
yep.
it's kind of like you said, right? Who's going to pick up a call, especially if you don't know them, and
So what
give
sort of
you work out of
KPIs are they
nowhere.
on? I mean, other than
Um,
sort of placements.
yeah, so you're talking about like your typical KPIs, like the number of phone calls that you make, or the amount of I guess potential client meetings that you need to have, or potentially the number of placements, which are very very. I'd like to think the companies would not be putting sort of targets on placements in this current climate to a degree. Like you're right, there are some areas and some industries that are recruiting. So, if you're in certain, like the government or FMCG or, like remote access, like Zoom or things like that, you'd be doing really well. But outside of that, then it'd be really tough. So you're talking about like KPIs could range from, doing, I'm just, exaggerating, but like, 100 calls a week because everyone's
Oh,
at home now.
that
So
is
you're doing that.
insane.
Exactly.
Surely that's got to turn the customers off. I mean, anyone's hiring, like they'd be absolutely bombarded right now.
Oh, definitely, right? And so, and yeah, so, and that goes back to, being very transactional. And unfortunately, people are just getting a bit desperate. So, their job's on the line. So they've got to, so I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
I was talking to my client yesterday, and he's one of, someone that I've worked with over the years where we've had a, good sort of partnership. And he was telling me that, not during normal times, he'd get approached by, recruiters or agencies maybe 8 to 10 times a week.
Oh,
And then
wow.
in the last week, he's been contacted via email or phone or LinkedIn over 120 times
Wow.
last week alone. And that was, and he was kind of telling me like they were pretty much trying to demand work off him, even though he didn't, even though he didn't have any work to go. So
How does that work? So how does that conversation go? Surely that can't be.
I can't imagine it going very well again. And it's very sort of transactional. It's very kind of like, give me work. I need jobs. And again, that's not going to really help your case for the bigger picture long run. So, and that's the thing. It's kind of like with periods like this, you've got to think about, I think, the bigger picture and the long term, because, you kind of, say you're calling all these people out right now, you're going to have this experience with them. And even at the best of times, it's already tough. But if you're going to have this experience, and then when the market picks up, you're going to try to call back these people. They're going to remember the time when you called them
You've already
demanding
burned
work.
the leads. Yeah, you burned the relationship. How could you possibly call them back up again? And look,
Exactly.
and the truth is, in the best of times, we don't have a particular good view of recruiters in general. I'm not saying you, but but the industry does have a certain stigma around it. These sort of used car salesman types. So
Definitely.
but I don't believe, as with all things, they're not all created equal. And I do believe that a good recruiter could make a massive difference in the entire process. What do you believe makes a good recruiter, in your opinion?
Yeah. So I guess from what I believe is that good recruiters should have a decent amount of integrity, which
Mm-hmm.
sounds quite funny, but again, you are dealing with people. So
Mm-hmm.
people are your product, and you are selling the people. So you've got to have that level of integrity, level of ethics, and I
Mm-hmm.
guess follow your instincts and have a bit of EQ, because I guess there's going to be times where it's appropriate and not appropriate, but you got to, again, thinking about the bigger picture. A good recruiter should be, I guess, from whether it's a candidate or a client, be a trusted
Mm-hmm.
advisor,
Yep.
someone that you can have a good partnership, honest relationship, someone that can give you, constructive feedback.
Yep.
So someone like that, I think those sort of qualities, I
Yeah.
think, stand out.
Someone who's going to tell them what they need to know, right? I mean, surely I've never look. There are a lot of times you hear about recruiters that just basically never call you back, and or if they if you get rejected for a job, they never give you anything that you can really improve on. Yeah. So for an example I heard, which is quite terrible, was this person who basically had a very thick accent, and the truth is nobody really understood what he heard, what he said, and every single time the feedback was, well, sorry, you don't have local experience. So it's so he spent the next 5 years going around trying to find local experience when it's a bit of a chicken or the egg. If he had just been told, look, we can't understand you, can you please, get some coaching around how you speak and communicate, then they'll be in a much better boat, right? So how do you, how do you tell? So I'll rephrase that question. How do you know that you're dealing with a recruiter that has those qualities you're talking about?
It comes back to something as simple as when they first interact with you, assuming it's normal times, but are they willing to actually meet you face to face to build and establish that relationship? Because I guess like anything, especially in these instances, it's very hard to, I guess, and the reason why people don't give feedback, it's hard giving negative feedback, especially to people that you don't know. But you want to build that relationship to the point where you can have that honest relationship and then tell them. And for me, the key thing is that I've always got that attitude of if I'm doing right by the candidate or the customer, then I'll give that feedback. It's not about ego. It's not about trying to say that you're better than someone, but it's about if it's generally going to help them achieve their goals or be improve, then I will give that feedback, whether it might not come across as, the nicest thing to hear, but if they need to hear it, I will kind of give it.
Okay. All right. So how can you tell? I mean, the problem is that most of the time, you meet a recruiter, you literally just met. How do you know he's somebody that you can trust? How do you know that he has integrity? If it's somebody new that you have never dealt with, that you just don't have any reputation to go on, how can you tell if a recruiter has integrity?
That's a very good question. So in terms of, I guess, if you're talking from that perspective, if they've got, common, networks or relationships of people that can vouch for them, that's one. And also, I guess, how much they actually listen to you in the first instance. I think as a recruiter, you need to understand your client or candidate's needs and pain points and provide a bespoke solution to that, rather than, your stock standard, this is what I do, etc., and then talk for the next 10 minutes and they're thinking they don't even care what I want to do. It's just more what they want to do. Like, for example, I had a recruiter reach out to me thinking that I was a client, and then they sent me CVs. And it's like, you don't even know what I'm doing, or like, why would you even send me CVs of people that, you don't even know what my business does, which is in the instances, which is recruitment. So they didn't even realize that I was a competitor. They just thought I was a IT company. So, when you got that level. So, but I think in terms of the integrity piece, again, to me, the biggest, I believe it's about the bigger picture. You want a long-term sort of relationship. You're not in this game to get sort of quick wins and make money and then, kind of just burn bridges, right? So, for example, one of my key clients that I've worked with over the past 5 years, I had such a good relationship with them. They always came to me, not because necessarily, maybe I was the cheapest, or, maybe because, I gave them quickly, but it was because they knew that they could trust me. So, for example, there was, I had to recruit a lot of roles with them. So, it was a big relationship where I couldn't stuff up. So, there'd be times where we'd have candidates that go through the process and, they got offered a job, but, some way I found out through, internal reference, or found out from someone else that, this person actually wasn't that good, or, there was potentially red flags throughout the process, which I've kind of flagged. Me personally, I've actually pulled out candidates before they, even if they got offered, because I knew that even if they got the job, they'd probably get sacked or they'd probably leave within the next month. And in that instance, it's not necessarily, the client will then remember, it's like, hey, you gave me someone that wasn't good. You know what I mean? And that would speak more volumes moving forward, and I'd lose potentially more business rather than lose that one deal right there and then. Because then, as long as I communicate it and tell them, look, this is the reason why I think they're not going to work out, I'll find you someone else. They would rather appreciate you spending a few days to find a replacement to get someone that's going to stay there for the next 2 years, as opposed to they can start tomorrow and then they leave within the next 1 to 3 months and you got to find a replacement then.
So,
So
mate, that sounds really unreal. It sounds like you're actually you're the exception rather than the rule. Would you sort of agree with that sort of assessment?
yeah, potentially. I guess with again with the KPIs and the emphasis on getting the deals.
Mm,
Sometimes your integrity is compromised because you've got to make that money.
mm,
Whereas again, there's no point making that money because there's guarantee periods anyway. So even if you did place them, you'd have to spend time finding someone and honoring that. And then again, the service and the experience that the client gets is not going to be a very positive one. So again, I'm a big believer of the bigger picture.
yep. Not
Yeah.
the yeah. No, I agree, and I think
And
that's
that's
the
the thing.
difference between. So I suppose a used car salesman type, which is the sort of the stereotypical recruiters that you get in the market, versus someone who obviously has a lot more integrity, somebody who cares about the long term and the outcome.
Well, I guess if you want to apply it to like a used car salesman, you'd want to at least be the car salesman that sells the car to a family that every time they need to upgrade their car, they're going to come to you, as opposed
Mm,
to I've bought one car and that's it. I'm going to go to someone else next time. So a lot of my relationships have been from the last 10 years. So people that have worked with me know me, that they'll still reach out to me after all this time. So and that's the beauty of being in an industry that long, having that experience and perspective.
absolutely. So you must have had a massive network, right? So right now, we're 750,000 people out of work. Surely there must be a lot of people calling you for help. So what sort of advice would you have for someone who's currently just being out of work and looking, for the next job during this crisis? What
Yeah.
sort of useful tips can you give them during COVID?
Yeah, so during this period of time, the key things that I would really emphasize,
Mm,
to keep it really simple, is first of all utilizing your networks. So that's really important. And even from my perspective, the networks are the most important thing for me right now, especially if I can't go out and try get new business. So I'm kind of leveraging off my current relationships. So which is the same thing for if you're a candidate, you would have worked potentially with a lot of different people that know how well you can do a good job,
mm,
and unfortunately there's a lot of good people that, got let go, and it's nothing personal. It's just the situation.
mm,
So, like you've got a good track record, you've got good experience, you're a good employee, then, leverage off the people that know you can do a good job. So reach out to them, let them know that you're back on the market, and then see, you never know what might come up. But, if they're going to need a position and, their organization needs to hire someone, they're going to reach out to people who they know first, rather than go onto Seek and LinkedIn where, there's 500 applicants waiting there, where, you're literally almost picking someone off the street. So they're always going to reach out to people they know. The next one then is, and it sounds quite funny, but it's learning again how to do interviews over phone and videos. So face-to-face interviews, that's always been a norm. So we've done a lot of coaching around that for candidates, but
mhm.
phone and video interviews is completely different, just in the sense there's slight nuances there. If it's a phone interview, you're not going to have, I guess, that visual cues and that feedback to see whether you're answering correctly or if you're not answering correctly. And I guess with video interviews, that is becoming a new norm. So
Yep.
like maybe having making sure you've got the professional attire on still, albeit me wearing a hat and you're
Me and
wearing
my
things.
NBA
Yeah,
jersey.
yeah,
So there you
the
go.
All-Star
Great
jersey,
tip.
but still maintaining things like that, making sure your background doesn't have, your wife's handbags there in the back, or,
Mhm,
there's a lot of different things to consider. So, and there's a lot of advice, which you can easily look up, or, I'm happy always to share, but,
mhm,
there's a lot of different things that you can do to make sure, because right now,
mm.
there are far and few between, the jobs.
Yep.
So if you do manage to get an interview, you do not want to stuff it up, especially if it's going to be based on a phone or a video interview. So
Mm.
you've got to be comfortable as well, giving, your, who you are as a person, articulating what you want to say over these different mediums as opposed to face to face. So,
Yeah.
the next time you might get an opportunity might be quite, far. So you want to make sure you nail this stuff. And then the last
See,
thing,
yeah.
Mhm.
So sorry about that. So my thinking around that though is that these sort of face-to-face interviews is not about projecting a particular image per se, but it's more around letting you're not trying to pretend to be somebody else, but you're trying to be somewhat authentic in that regard. It's more a challenge of being comfortable in the new medium, right?
Correct.
So
Yes.
I mean
Yeah.
I've done more video calls and probably, in the last couple of weeks, and I have done in my entire career.
Yeah.
And I worked for Telstra at one stage. So,
Mm.
so I do believe that, these video calls do have their own etiquette, their own, and like you said, it just feels a little bit different that you can't, shake your hand, you can't go for a beer afterwards. But I'm becoming more comfortable on video, as I'm sure you are.
Yeah.
But it's not about sort of pretending to be somebody else, or
Mm.
okay, fair
Most
enough.
definitely.
Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
No, no, I get what you're saying.
it's not about
And
sort of. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, you are right there, and it goes back to the simple principle. I think, like with anything, right? You've got to be comfortable when doing an interview, because when you're
Mm.
comfortable, that's when you're going to give your best self. You're going to
Yep.
be, that authenticity, and you're not going to get, I guess, reduce the chances of being nervous, because when you're either uncomfortable or you're not familiar with it, that's when you kind of tend to, go into your shell, or potentially, go down a path that might be hard to get back from. So it's just, you're right. It's just about making people feel more familiar with the different mediums. So it's not basically, the way you want to make is that you do not want to lose a job
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't perform on a phone or a video interview.
Yep.
You want to, if you're going to lose a job, you're going to lose a job because you're not the right fit or you don't have the necessary experience. But
Yep.
you don't want to lose it as something as simple as the way the medium or the way the interview was conducted. And
Agreed.
that same principle applies to face-to-face interviews as well.
Yep.
And then the last point that I would make is that you need to make make sure that your CV is on point. Given I guess the lack of face-to-face interactions even from a recruitment perspective, I can't meet candidates face-to-face anymore. I can do it over the phone, but in terms of the CVs, there's going to be a lot more CVs, a lot more candidates out there in the market. So you need to make sure that your CV is appealing to the point where people want to call you up to then organize an interview. So it's making sure you got the right information there. The formatting's easy to read, especially not printing it out but over the screen, and making sure it's got the right content for the role. So putting the right information in there.
And so this is probably going to open up Pandora's box, but what's your view on customized CVs on a per job basis? Do you need to make sure that you send in the right CV for every job that you apply for? Like, do you need to customize for every job, or is this, is your CV just the one CV that you send out for all your jobs?
Yeah. So my approach would be, in a perfect world, you would need to talk to someone before you even apply for the job. And what I mean by that is, if you could get in touch with the person that has information on the job, they will then tell you what they are looking for. Once they tell you what they're looking for, then you can actually go and tailor your CV to exactly what they want before you actually apply. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, and it's really hard to tailor the CV. So look, I would tailor my CV according to each role, because a lot of candidates miss out because they've got the experience, but again, recruiters, if it's not on the CV, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
No one's a mind reader. No one knows, unless they actually get onto the phone and call you, they're not going to know you have this specific information. So you need to kind of put it in as much as you can, which means, unfortunately, you will need to tailor it, which is very time consuming. But I guess if you're going to apply for a job, you might as well put in a little bit more effort to increase your chances of getting an interview as opposed to not. The other thing I want to add is, unless they've really asked for a cover letter, I wouldn't even I wouldn't write a cover letter. Like, to be honest, in the last 10 years, I've probably read about 10 cover letters, if that. So
Wow.
I wouldn't even waste time on that. So a lot more emphasis on the CV, definitely, and tailoring it specifically for the role.
Cool. And so, looking into a crystal ball, what do you think will happen? Like, when do you think this whole mess will end?
Look, I think with obviously the infection rates and that sort of going quite low, I think that's really positive for the market. They will, once I think they've got the health part kind of settled, then it's back to how we can get the economy back up. So they were talking about Bondi Beach opening up next week. I have a feeling I think they'll relax the lockdown laws a little bit more. So hopefully within the next month or two, we might see business picking up a little bit more. And then once that does, that happens, I think clients, they will need to hire. They will go back to hiring. They'll get off the holds and the hire freezes, and then look to get back to hiring people, which I think is a good thing.
Yep.
I think people have, I guess, with the lockdown laws, they've kind of stabilized a bit, so they know that that sort of shock and that transition period's over. So I have noticed that there are, a few more opportunities out there. I'm talking to candidates on the market. They've got more opportunities. They've had like multiple interviews. So
Mm-hmm.
it is picking up. So it's just a matter of being patient and, keeping positive throughout this period, and then just, keep trying. Don't give up. That's the main thing. And then obviously from a recruiter's perspective, I think from candidates and clients, once this period's over, it will be better for them because there will be less recruiters out there in the market. So the ones that I guess will survive and get through these times, they will be the ones that know the market more, they know the people, and they will provide a better quality and service to you. So hopefully, that will improve the recruitment industry as a whole.
Wow. Okay. So that's a bit of a silver lining in all of this, isn't it? So
Yeah,
there'll be
yeah.
less used car salespeople and more of the honest operators with integrity who looks to the long term, who looks after clients, who looks after the candidates. So I think that's certainly a positive note to end on.
Mm.
So I appreciate the insight that you've just given me today, and I think this is something that will probably be. I do believe that this whole pandemic does change the market quite a bit, but if what you're saying is true, it's probably for the better. So it probably washes out, I suppose, the people that are less desirable in this market, and hopefully it also leads to a better recruitment experience for everyone involved. So thanks for that. I really appreciate your time today.
No, you're welcome, man. Happy to help out.
Cheers.
See you, mate.
All right. See ya.